Hi, folks. Hey, it's John Torino here, your friendly wedding officiant in the Portland, Vancouver area. And I wanted to share some stuff with you about the kinds of questions that I normally get during an upfront consultation with the brides and grooms that I'm going to be officiating their weddings. And one of the things that I found that most brides and grooms, particularly first timers, have no clue of actually how a ceremony is supposed to go and what they're supposed to say and when they're going to say it and who else is going to be there. So I thought I would take a few minutes and take you through a typical ceremony. Uh, when I do ceremonies for folks, I customize them. I make them exactly as they want them so that it meets all their needs and their wants and their desires. And we get them exactly perfect together as we go through it so there will be no surprises when we get to the ceremony, to the wedding day. But a typical one looks a little bit like this. We start with and I need the name, obviously, address, and that sort of thing, bride and groom. Uh, I have a diagram that shows the processional. You can find that on my Facebook page or my Pinterest pages. And so we go through what a processional looks like. And sometimes there's only a maid of honor and a best man. Other times there are 6 or 7 bridesmaids, 6 or 7 groomsmen, a ring bearer, a flower girl or two. So, we customize that. I find out exactly what's going to happen and who's going to be there, and we take that into account. And then there's usually the what's called a family blessing, where I ask after everybody's been seated, who gives this bride, and that's when the bride's companion or father typically comes up and they stop right at the front of the audience, and then I ask who gives this bride, and he does. And then the groom comes down and gets her, and then they come up and stand together. So when they do that, then I start with the welcome statement. And that's a fairly straightforward thing. It says, "Dearly beloved, we are here today to join in holy matrimony, the bride and the groom. It's a day of great celebration." And then the next is a typical, if it's Christian ceremony, talks about a reading from Corinthians. But if somebody wants a non-religious ceremony or a Buddhist ceremony or another kind, we replace that and um, take them through the discussion of how long the folks have been together. I find that out, and what their goals are. And then there's a sermon that says, "Marriage is a sacred ceremony. Today we observe the union of these two folks." And then I address the bride and groom, which says, "Learn to work together, to laugh together, and to love together," and so on and so forth. Now, sometimes people would like to have a guest reading. Or sometimes a guest song. So if you, as a bride or a groom, would like to have somebody do a special reading for you, or sometimes a remembrance for folks who can't be at the wedding, either through distance or because they have passed away, then we take that into account. It's not a requirement, but it's an option if you need it. And then we do the exchange of vows, where I say, "Bride, you may begin, groom, you may begin." And the vows can be either the standard vows, which I've shown on this diagram, or they can be custom made. I normally help the brides and grooms figure out whether they want to use the standard ones or slightly modify them or write their own. And there's some guidelines. For example, you want to keep them fairly short, a few sentences. I had one guy who wanted to write 3 pages, and it did not go over well with his guests. So we try to keep that fairly short. I did have another one who wrote a fairly long one, page long, and it was hilarious, actually, some of the vows. And the audience knew him, the guests knew him, and they knew his personality. So, I mean, it really went over very well. But in general, we try to keep them fairly standard. And in this part of the ceremony, I kind of spoon feed them to the bride and the groom. So I will say, "I, bride, take you, groom." And then the bride will say that. And I say, "For my lawfully wedded husband." And the bride will say that. "To have and to hold." And so in little pieces, I give that to them. So they don't have to memorize anything. Then there's the what's called declaration of intent. And this is really the legal part of what needs to be said. So this one we don't modify. And in general, I read this and then I ask them, and then I've coached them to say I do. So this is the actual declaration of intent. And then there's some options. I have some clients who want a sand ceremony, some clients who want a unity candle ceremony, some who want other kinds of elements added, hand fasting and other things, and I'm happy to do that. And then we do a prayer and a blessing. Again, if this is a Christian wedding or a religious wedding, or we can replace that with something from Carl Sagan or something else, or a reading from the Buddha or whatever. And then we do the exchange of rings. And there again, I spoon feed these vows or these words to the client, commemorating this union. You may now exchange rings. The circle formed by each ring, and it's during this time that we get the rings either from the ring bearer or the best man. A lot of times depends on the age of the ring bearer. And then I spoon feed, for example, the bride. Groom, I give you this ring as a symbol of my love for you and our commitment to our marriage. As I place it on your finger, and that's when the ring starts to go on the finger. So I spoon feed that. There's no issue with that. And then once they've done that, it's time for the pronouncement. So the vows are spoken, witnessed by God and your guests, your friends and relatives. You've sealed your vows with the giving and receiving of these rings. So now, by the power vested in me, by my ministry and the state that you are being married in, I pronounce you husband and wife. And then it's time for the kiss. So, and then if there are any comments, final comments for a reception or whatever, I try to get those in. And then I now do the presentation where I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Groom and bride, husband and wife. And that's when they will begin to walk down the aisle the other way. And then we're all done. So it's actually a fairly simple process, takes 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the number of elements that we put into it. And I love doing weddings. I mean, they're happy occasions. Brides and grooms are usually very nervous about what's going to happen and how it's going to do it. So I really work hard with them up front to try to allay that nervousness and make sure that they're not scared. People are scared to talk in front of large groups, but I coach them. Breathe while you're up there. And groom, do not lock your knees or you're going to fall on your face. And speak up whenever you can. I'm going to do it slowly. And depending on the size of the wedding and the venue for the wedding, we may or may not have the DJ or other sound person put up microphones. And there are a lot of things, and I customize these things and I make recommendations. So if you want help planning your wedding, and I don't mean with the complete planning job. I don't do that. I don't deal with the caterers or the cake makers or the bridal dress people and all that. But I'm happy to work with a upfront planner. I'm happy to work with a day of coordinator so that things go exactly as you would like them to go. So give me a call. I'm available by cell phone at 503-877-4609. Or you can visit my website at http://yourminister.org. That's all one word, yourminister.org. Or send me an email at that's not quite right. Sorry, johnturino@gmail.com. JONTURINO, no H in there, @gmail.com. And I will contact you just as soon as I can. You can find on my website, on yourminister.org, a booking calendar to see if I'm available on your date. If I am, then it's time to contact me, and we will get started in the process of getting you married. And I'd love to marry you. Give me a call. Give me an email. Visit my website. I'd love to marry you.